And welcome back to The Wrap. Well, 2 weeks after the Charleston, South Carolina church shooting that killed 9 people, there's word now that $29 million in victim aid is on a fast track. The payout is significantly higher than those given to victims of other recent tragedies. A little over $8 million was given to victims of the Boston Marathon terror attack, for example. Nearly $3 million was given to victims of the Colorado, that was the Aurora theater shooting during Batman at a midnight screening. And also $1.5 million was initially given to the families of the Sandy Hook Elementary shooting. So we want to tell you at home, this is a complicated story. And we want to make sure that we get it right the best we can. But I'm not sure, Heather, that this can be explained away in the 6 minutes that we have in terms of where the money comes from, and more importantly, how the amount is decided. Again, $29 million for Charleston, and then $3 million only for, say, the Aurora theater victims.
Yeah, everything that I could read today doesn't tell you how it is decided, how much money is apportioned. It looks to me as though the money is taken from criminal fines, forfeiture, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And so the money is then put together, and they apportion it out to people who are victims of crimes. But they don't give it to the people. From what I can tell, they give it to the states to then use for trauma care, legal care, socioeconomic support, and that type of thing.
Trauma legal for the victims.
For the victims and the families.
Okay.
What is not clear is why, if you look at the Boston Marathon, they were given $8.3 million. Why it would be so much more in this situation.
Right.
And the same thing with Sandy Hook. You know, you've got 20 children dead and 7 adults, and it appears that they were given 1.5 initially and then 14.3 million later. Mm-hmm. So there's something about this that bears more discussion and discovery. And it's just hard to figure.
And Heather's got it exactly right as far as we can find out, and this is part of the problem. This is very odd. I don't know that none of the money gets to people who've been injured or their families. I don't know if some does. The problem is, and I'm having one of my conservative days, I'm afraid, but you know, we see this so many times. The story came out this morning. We all spend our time looking into the story so we can tell people tonight what it means. And you know what? We don't know what it means after a whole day. And if we don't, neither does anybody else. And I gotta ask, why doesn't the White House, seeing that or the Justice Department, seeing that everybody's confused, send somebody out to explain it? It's not that hard. Right. And then we can explain to people who are thinking, why are they wasting our taxpayer dollars, or what's this money being used for? Fair questions, by the way, folks. Mm-hmm. We can explain it, which is our job, but yet they don't come out and clarify it. And I'll bet you they don't do it tomorrow either.
No, and it didn't come from, say, a right-wing blog, left-wing blog. No. That Reuters originally reported on this story, and Reuters isn't seen as partisan in any capacity. So I guess the question is that the perception comes, and look, when I first saw this story and I saw $29 million, I said, give them $290 million. These people went through a horrible thing. Until I saw the other numbers, I said, well, now wait a minute, there needs to be some sort of consistency. So I guess at least the perception, because it is so convoluted, is that the Obama administration is giving more money because these were black victims.
Yeah, that's going to be the impression that I think a lot of people will get, and I think it serves the White House's interest to dispel that notion if it can be dispelled. The alternative is that politically it does benefit this White House to allow that kind of a sentiment to fester and not address it directly. When you look at the math, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, as you said, to have these victims, however harmed they may be, and it's a substantial harm, and the whole community has been affected by this. But when you look at the Boston bombing, you had 200 plus people who were injured in that bombing, and their families, and their legal costs. So that monetarily doesn't make a lot of sense, and there is an element in this administration that is very interested in having Barack Obama be the black president, but Pierre very interested in reparative justice, social reparative justice. And I think that element might have something to do with this. I don't want to think that, but I do think that, and there should be something who addresses that.
But
Heather,
I'm sorry, but I do think, I mean, to your point, Rick, this administration doesn't want to have to explain themselves.
This is what's interesting, and you may very well be right. So you're going to see one of two things happen. Either the Justice Department will step forward and clarify this, or they won't. And if they don't, we're all going to be left with a feeling that maybe Noah's right here, right? And this, while it does go away, people aren't going to be focused on this story next week, but it's had a collective impact on this White House's ability to communicate their message, because they create this problem where people just have this tendency not to trust them when they are telling the truth.
I think they'd rather dismiss it.
Maybe so.
I think they'd rather
We'll
just leave
see.
it out there.
We'll see. And you may well be right.
Call it conspiracy.
Yeah.
But the problem is it perpetuates the whole problem with racial imbalance and people
does.
having these fights and not being able to discuss these things. And you can't discuss it if you don't understand it, and it's impossible to understand.
It's
as much
it's
as
a big mistake if they don't tell us why these folks got, and none of us object to these people getting all the help in the world.
Do you think that there was an
We need to
emotional
know.
aspect to this? In other words, we only have
Maybe.
30 seconds, so just
because
give
they
them
were
what
so
they need.
wonderful.
Maybe.
I mean,
Yeah.
they were so wonderful that you feel like they deserve an award, but it just doesn't make
But
sense.
if I'm a family member of somebody up in Boston or in Colorado, I'm a little emotional myself.
Or
You
even
know?
if your family got taken out by a serial killer, like what, that murder doesn't mean
Yeah, right.
more.
It
I
doesn't
mean,
count.
On the
because this
other
was
hand,
more
the racial
politicized.
aspects
We got to
of this
go.
might be a bigger legal issue.
Absolutely. Should Charleston be getting more relief funding than Sandy Hook, Aurora, or Boston? Newsmaxtv.com/comments. Let us know. Back in a moment.